thinner than the Flying Eagle cents. These started to be a problem for the mint because they were debasing, they were actually making the mint coins more valuable than they should have been. So finally, the mint gave in, and in 1864, they switched to the same kind of metal that was being used for the tokens. In other words, French bronze. These were lighter and thinner than the Flying Eagle cents or the copper nickel Indian cents. And this is basically the same size and the same alloy that has persisted in our cents up until 1981. These were doing fine, but at the same time, there was some agitation due to Civil War feeling for, and also due to the copper companies wanting to sell more copper for a 2-cent piece. So in fact, in December 1863, the mint director, James Pollock, work here. James Pollock wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Treasury, Salmon P. Chase, suggesting that a 2-cent piece be issued in the same metal as the Indian cent. And this was accepted, but Chase wrote back and said that he would prefer that the motto, which was proposed on the coin, be changed to "In God We Trust." And there's an interesting story about that, which may be apocryphal, but Salmon P. Chase's daughter had just been married to the president of Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. And the motto of Brown University is "In Deo Speramus," which is "In God Our Trust." So there's some suspicion that Secretary Chase may have wanted to put in a plug for his son-in-law's university with this slogan change. At any rate, it was accepted, and this was the first time that the motto "In God We Trust" appeared on American coinage. Later, it was made mandatory that it be there. Here's the coin, which has been sometimes called the most uninteresting coin that was ever issued by the United States because it doesn't show anything but the shield and a wreath of wheat. But most people like them. After a while, they became unnecessary in circulation, and gradually the mint just stopped putting them out. Let's move on here, because time's a wasted. Let's see what's next. But I don't want to miss anything, because I've got some notes here, and I don't want to forget to tell you anything important. We go to the silver 3-cent piece, and this does have some interesting stories about it. It came about because in 1851, an act of Congress was issued lowering the postal rates from 5 cents to 3 cents. And wise heads in government council said, well, what will people buy these 3-cent stamps with? We need a coin in that denomination. The wiser heads said, no, if we put out a silver coin in the 3-cent denomination, they'll all disappear from circulation because the speculators will get them. So they said, well, let's make it out of billium, which is an alloy that contains some, but not a whole lot, of silver. So its bullion value is worth less than its face value, and they thought that that would solve the problem. So after a couple of different suggestions, this tiny little coin, which is incidentally the smallest coin that was ever issued by the United States, came out in circulation. And there were several variations of this during its brief life, because after a while, the entire coinage was re-regulated so that the silver content was reduced right across the board. And trimes, as these were called, half dimes, dimes, quarters, and halves all were reduced in silver content so that they wouldn't be hoarded. Anyway, these were called fish scales by the people who had to carry them around in their pockets and spend them because they were small and tinkly and tended to drop on the ground real easily. They weren't real popular. The alloy that they were made called billion had frequently been used, or a variant had been used in the coinage industry for many centuries in different forms. In this case, it was 75% silver, 25% copper. these were minted by the millions, and one of the good things that they did was they took the place of a Spanish coin that had been in circulation in the United States for a long time, called the cuartilla, which was a quarter of a real, which was equal to about 3.5 cents American money. So these enabled those cuartillas to just disappear from circulation too. For a long time, this little silver coin and the American gold dollar were the only minor coins that were in circulation in the United States. Everything else had disappeared into speculators' hands. So there was a serious coin shortage in the 50s and 60s. I wanted to stress that. At the same time as these silver coins were being circulated, a man in the nickel industry, a huge nabob of nickel named Joseph Orton, had been agitating constantly for coinage made out of nickel, because he owned nickel mines, and he had a huge financial interest in selling loads and loads of nickel. He would be a better customer than the mint. Finally, he and his friends prevailed. He was related and a part of the families that were managing the mint, which was kind of a family affair. That's another story. And finally, in the mid-1860s, he prevailed, and government councils acceded to the issuance of a nickel 3-cent piece. And that's it. That's how it looked when it was in improved condition. Most of them just looked kind of gray and drab. But these were not supposed to replace the silver chimes, but they were issued mainly to retire the hated, filthy 3-cent fractional notes that had been circulating. And Rick talks about these in his talk. That's another story. But in the background of all these coins were circulating billions of printed paper notes for 3 cents, 5 cents, 25 cents, 50-cent amounts. And they very quickly wore out and got filthy. They were disease vectors. People hated them. But they were hard to withdraw from circulation if there wasn't some protective place. This successfully replaced the 3-cent notes that were circulating. And once they had disappeared, there was no longer any need for this, and production of it stopped. However, it had become feasible in the mint to produce coins. I should show that one just yet. Let me come back to that. It had become feasible to produce nickel coins. So, in order to replace a silver half dime, which had been circulating, we'll come back to that. This is just to get on with nickel coins. The mint issued its first nickel coins. It's called the shield nickel. It was basically the same planchet and the same alloy that is our current nickel. So that's really our most successful form of coinage, because the alloy and the size hasn't changed since it was first issued in 1866. Now we'll go back and see these half dimes. Circulating alongside all the other coins have always been this minor silver coinage. The half dime is the smallest denomination. These disappeared during the Civil War because of hoarding. This is an earlier version of it. This is the first design by Christian Gobrecht. And if you'd been watching your change at that time, and many people did because they didn't trust it, they looked at what was in their pocket, you would notice differences in the coins that were coming to you in commerce. This was the first design. In 1859, I think in keeping with the trend toward ornamentation and more ornate design that took place during the Victorian era, this serial leaf design took the place of the more simple design. You see how there's nothing on the reverse there but half dime and the legend, and there's just stars around Liberty on the outburst. The newer design put the United States of America around Liberty, did away with the stars, and reduced the size of the reef so that this giant half dime denomination could be printed in. So that's just an aside.
Yeah, I love this.
This is what the dime looked like starting in 1837. These were all designed by Christian Gobrecht, who was the mint engraver at that time. The Liberty seated quarter was just the same, some minor variations. And all of these went through minor changes in alloy and silver content through the years, which were denoted by various devices like rays around the eagle or stars, and arrows under the date, beside the date, as that's shown here. This is the $half of the corresponding series. And the silver dollar. Silver dollars did not circulate very much at all during the Civil War era. They were mainly used for bullion transfer and foreign commerce, held in treasury vaults. And last but not least, the Liberty had the gold dollar, which was the smallest of the gold denominations, was circulating throughout this time, if you could get them. I mean, gold was hoarded too, but some of these did circulate because they had probably less than a dollar's worth of gold in their content. And I'm going to close with this picture. This is my own gold dollar, which my grandfather, who was a grocer in Washington, D.C., received in one of his stores around 1906. And I still have that in my collection, a coin which I am more personally attached to any of the other coins that I own. So I have taken up too much time here. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them, but I'm going to turn this over to Rick and Rebecca. Now,
I dig up coins,
you're a collector.
and sometimes I dig them up in the dark. And one of the things you didn't refer to was the border of the coin.
Oh, the rim.
Yeah, sometimes they have writing on the border. Sometimes smaller denominations have smooth borders. Dimes, quarters, stuff like that have rigid borders where you